All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this week of Tablebuzz podcast. We have an Olympian on again this week, Reid Watts. He's a luger. He just came back from Beijing, I guess, a week or so ago. Reid, how are you?
Doing great, thanks. How about you guys?
We're good, man.
Unreal.
Yeah,
So you just said you're on vacation mode after the Olympics?
Yeah, I was on vacation mode. I just got back like a couple weeks ago. I was home for a few days and then headed off with a bunch of friends to Mexico. And kind of been back here, honestly, being a bit of a loafer right now compared to some of the other athletes in Beijing, right? Who are, they're still competing with either World Cups, World Championships. But for me, yeah, that was the end of the season for us. As soon as I hit the pad and the team relay, that was vacation mode for me. So
nice.
Yeah, well earned, I'm sure. That's
so your World Cup circuit is all over for the season. It rounds up.
It ends usually just for the Olympics, right? Our season is so based around the Olympics. So yeah, Olympics is the end of the show for us.
Cool. How'd your regular season go?
To be honest, it really didn't go very well at all for me. I didn't quite have the results I was looking for. There was a lot of things that didn't quite fall into place the way I wanted to, whether it was me making my own mistakes or whether we were trying some crazy stuff with the sled that didn't quite work out. There was a lot of things that really didn't quite go my way, but it was a solid way to kind of finish things off, especially with the team event in the Olympics, to kind of end things off on more of a high note, but not quite where I wanted to end up, especially in the World Cup circuit. But at least we were trying stuff, and yeah, we know now some of it just doesn't quite work the way we were thinking it was going to. So
yeah, so you had a big sixth place finish there at the Olympics. But you just touched on it there a sec. I'm kind of interested in it now. What do you guys do to your sleds to alter them up? And
oh man, it's where do I even start, right? And the longer I'm in it, the less I know too. But a lot of it is like a big sort of basic principle, not to get too complicated, is like with the runners, right? The actual steel part that's touching the ice, that's where, we get all our control from. And just a general rule of thumb is like the sharper the steels are, the more control you have, the safer it is, but also the more friction there is, the slower it gets, right? So that's kind of a basic rule of how we run things, but it gets so unbelievably complicated for these sleds that have no moving parts. But with a sport that's timed down to the thousandth of a second, and races are won or lost within that margin, there's so many things, right? Like aerodynamics, what kind of materials you're building your sleds out of, Kufins and stuff like that. The list just goes on and on and on, right?
Yeah, just like the F1 drivers. I'm sure you guys have your own stuff like that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
exactly. It's kind of F1-ish in a sense, right? And yeah.
Unreal.
I'm sure you could drive yourself crazy trying to shave off like 1,000th of a second. I couldn't imagine wrapping my brain around.
Yeah, it's the beauty of our sport, right?
And I'm sure you're thinking about all those things when you're flying 130 kilometers down the track too.
Yeah, no kidding, right? And that's the thing, right? Is when races are won or lost within, it can be thousandths of a second, hundredths of a second, right? It's really tough to kind of shake off when you've made a mistake down the track and you've just lost a bunch of precious time. It can be really hard to kind of come back, regroup, and just finish strong, right? But that's just how it goes in our sport.
Yeah, the mental side is just down to the second. It would be nuts.
Yeah, that's the thing with luge, right? Is there's definitely a physical aspect, especially up at the start, right? And there is a physical side, but it's more of a game of chess, right? How mentally clear you have to be, how on you have to be, and how composed you have to be too, right? Like you don't want to be all jacked up going down the track. It's kind of like you want to be calm, cool, and collected. And when you're racing and sliding, sometimes going over 140 kilometers an hour, right? It's easier said than done. So
what kind of like off ice training to get your, like you just talked about the mental side, but to get your body ready for it? Like I know there's a huge push at the start to try and get some speed, but when you're flying down the track, like is there parts of your body that you're using more than others to steer the sled?
Going down the track, it's definitely a little more of a core stability thing, and of course neck, right? Core and just neck, the way you have to hold your head up through these corners. That's the most physical part about actually going down the track, because when you're going into some of these corners at the bottom of the track, you can be pulling over 5 Gs. So you're trying to lift your head that's now over 5 times as heavy. And there's this really interesting thing, actually. If your neck's not strong enough and up to snuff, we call it losing our head. And it's when you go into a corner and your head can't take the G-force, it goes down. And the next really interesting thing is once your head's gone, there's no getting it back. So once it's down and locked in, you're pretty much just staring up throughout the whole corner, can't get it back up, running blind. And yeah, that's a scary part. But of course, the biggest physical part to our sport is the start. It's you need a combination of like good, snappy upper body strength with some flexibility, right? And coordination too, of course. But that's usually what we spend most of our summers training, is the start. You can't really simulate too much of the sliding aspect of our sport in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever travel like outside of Canada to be able to get on like tracks in the winter or in the summer, but just with winter conditions?
No, that's not really a thing in the summer. They can't run these tracks in the summer. We used to do this thing called wheel sliding, where, you know, the tracks, they're these big, long concrete snakes, right, that they just ice over in the winter. And we used to do this thing where we just put little like rollerblading rollers on our sleds, and you go down the track, the concrete track on a roller sled, right, going pretty much just as fast as you would on ice, which is interesting. But we didn't really find it, or personally, I don't really find it too beneficial, because the amount of grip you have on the concrete with those wheels is just so much more than you get with steel on the ice. So I didn't really find it overly beneficial, but yeah.
Sounds like good fun at the very least.
Yeah, it is fun, but also pretty dangerous too, right? Because tipping over, or the risk of tipping over and hitting walls when it's concrete instead of ice, right? That it can take some skin off.
Yeah,
pretty
zipping
easy,
around
I'd
in
say.
gym class on the little square scooter.
Yeah, that's
rollers.
what I was picturing.
Pretty much the same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I assume you just didn't wake up one day and you're suddenly all interested in luge. Like, what got you into the sport?
Well, I'm born and raised in Whistler, BC, right? So of course the Vancouver 2010 Olympics happened here, which was a huge part of my story. But anyways, it was before the actual Olympics. They were doing training runs down the track here in Whistler, which was newly built. I think it was like the fall of 2008, I believe. And my dad was like, "Hey, Reid, do you want to go check this sledding stuff out on this new track?" And of course, I went with him. And I just thought seeing those sleds go down the track at like 150 kilometers an hour was the coolest thing in the world, right? And I was so hooked. I was so perplexed by the whole thing, right? And I was lucky enough that at the time they were starting out with a BC Luge program. And of course they pick kids young. They start you young, and over years develop you into being able to race at the next level. But yeah, no, just watching the sleds go down, I thought was the coolest thing in the world. I was lucky enough that they were starting a little program here. And of course I just took the first run and was like, this is it. Funnest thing in the world, right? So never really looked back.
And did it take any time to decide, do I want to do luge or skeleton, or did you end up trying both, or even bobsled?
The honest truth that not many people say actually is the only reason I really picked luge is because they're the only one that start recruiting when you're 9 years old, right?
Yeah.
Skeleton, they're not really getting kids involved when you're that young, because you can kind of just it doesn't take the drivability, same as bobsleigh. You can pretty much come right from a track and field or football background, and a couple years behind the D rings, you can kind of drive. But luge, it just has such a it takes a lot more precision, a lot more finesse. So that's why I started out so young, but don't regret it at all.
No, definitely not.
I wouldn't regret it when you had the kind of early success you had either at the Youth Olympics. Can you tell?
Yeah, that's right.
Like?
No, that was a really good season for me. Of course, the Youth Olympics is that was a really cool moment. Of course, being able to take the bronze medal with me, that was really cool. And that was also the season I was kind of long listing Pyeongchang. I was young, I was kind of an underdog, but I knew that season I had a real shot in making that Olympic team. And I made some massive steps that season. And it was just, yeah, huge part to the success.
Yeah, I'm sure that would definitely launch you into the conversation for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But even that season too, that's where I sort of made a bit of a name for myself with the national team head coach. And that's sort of where the whole thing kind of started, that this Pyeongchang thing can really happen, right?
Yeah.
So have you ever, like, you race in men's singles for the Luge, but you're one of or are you the top ranked luger in Canada at the moment?
Yep, I am.
So have there ever, congratulations, by the way, have
Yeah,
they
thank you.
tried to pair you up with someone else to make like a doubles team for a Luge, or have you ever always just competed on your own?
It's more of a thing when you're in the junior levels to do both singles and doubles. So yeah, I did my time on the bottom of a double sled with my my old pal Matt Riddle as the top guy, and yeah, it was a school of hard knocks for sure. Had a lot of crashes. Doubles is a very interesting event, and respect to those guys. It's super tricky, right? The sled's a lot more top heavy and just not as easy to get down the hill. But yeah, I spent, I believe, 2 seasons, maybe it was 3, 2.5 on the old double sled. Had a bit of success in the Youth World Cup tour on that, but more or less it was just running a bit of a gauntlet, lots of crashing. And those are the memories I take away from it anyways, right? Super happy to kind of get on the single sled. I like being in control myself. So
Cool.
yeah.
So is there any like type of differentiation between the roles? I know in bobsled, when there's more than one person in the sled, there's like the pilots, the drivers, like the pushers. When you're on the top or on the bottom, like what kind of roles are you taking on?
Well, the guy in the top has the eyes, right? He's the one who can see what's coming. From the bottom, you don't quite have the best view down there. So the top guy, he does more of the steering with the legs, which is usually that's the primary way we drive these sleds, is using our legs on the rounded runners we call the kuffins. So he does that. The bottom guy is more with the shoulders and the body, making the smaller changes, like getting the sled onto the corners smooth and coming off the corners. That's more or less the bottom guy's job, but the top guy definitely does the most of the driving.
He does the grunt work pretty well.
He does the grunt work, and the bottom guy is just kind of suspension almost, more or less, right?
Getting the nice pictures.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, obviously we talked about how it's a mental aspect of this sport, obviously. So just before a run, like, what are you thinking in your head? Are you hyped? Are you hyped up, or are you just trying to keep it calm? And
I try to keep it calm.
Yeah.
I've tried to come in with the super hyped up approach, and needless to say, that has never worked out for me at all. Getting jazzed up, all excited. Usually before a race, I like to, of course, within like 30 minutes to start, that's sort of when I start crushing my warm up, and it's around 15 minutes to start where, start getting changed and getting the mind in the race mode. So of course there's a lot of imagery runs, a lot of sharp focus on it, but something I've worked on this year that it's actually taken a lot to work with is about 5 minutes to my actual run. I start doing these breathing exercises and stuff to really just calm the brain. Just shut the brain off, right? Because at that point, you've done all the training. You know how to get down the track fast. You've done all the work, and you just, the goal for me has always been to just keep the brain off and keep it instinctual. So yeah, just keep the brain quiet, keep it calm, try to achieve that flow state, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, effortless in a way, right? So that's kind of the way I've been going at it. one of my teammates calls it easy speed. That's kind of the easy speed. You've done all the training, done all the hard work. Now it's just time to enjoy it, keep it easy, instinctual, right? So yeah.
So as you're heading down the track, obviously, like, you don't want to touch the walls, the sides. That's gonna,
No.
That's slowing you down big time. But where can you like make up seconds if you do, like, on a turn? Are you trying to, like, you see sometimes they move higher up and then lower down on the turn as they're going around? Like, what's the strategy on the big turns, I guess?
It all depends really on what the corner is, but look at you. You're a professional. You already know what to look for, right? Ideally, normally, you want to keep it as even as possible, right? The more you're moving around, the more distance you're covering, right? That's hundredths of a second, right? And you do that all the way down the track, it more or less adds up. But that's not always the case, because you're always going through that corner with the goal, with the like absolute objective of setting the next one up, right? So you gotta, it's a puzzle, right? If you don't enter this one corner in the right area, right, you're gonna have to steer it a little harder to get it online, right? And you have to make all these adjustments to get it back online as soon as possible, all to set yourself up for the angle into the next one, right? But normally it's, yeah, you want to keep it as even as possible, right? The more waving, that's not usually good. But there's some corners, like there's a good example is this one corner we have on the Whistler Sliding Center track, corner 11, where it's actually super important you get that wave, right? So you can come up from the exit and cross over into the next corner 12 perfectly. But every track is different, every corner is different, which, keeps it interesting, right?
Actually, yeah, that was gonna be my next question, actually. Are there any tracks that, like, I'm assuming the layout is different on all of them, but are there any that you really favor or some that you like to stay away from, that you struggle more on?
Yeah, all those are great questions. There's two tracks that really have a super special place in my heart. The one I just went to for the first time this year was in St. Moritz, Switzerland, and it's just this super cruisy, unbelievably feel good track, right? That they actually dig out of the snow every year. So it's not like the artificial tracks where it's, concrete and artificially cooled with ammonium piping and a refrigeration plant. They just dig this one straight out of the snow, like 1,700 meters long. And you can get up to like 140 kilometers an hour there, which is just, and the track is just so unbelievably smooth. It's such a feel good one. And then there's another one which actually got damaged in a landslide this year, which was a tough one for me to see. It's in Königssee, Germany, and it's a little bit of the opposite of the one in St. Moritz, Switzerland, right? It's very old school, very flat out, and incredibly technical. But when you piece a good run from top to bottom there, like a really nice one, it's just such a rewarding feeling, right? Because from pretty much the second you leave the start handles, you have to be on all the way to the finish, and makes it really fun. And there's some tracks, that I don't favor, of course. There's one in Innsbruck, Austria, that for the life of me, I've just never had a good result there, and things just never seem to go my way there. And I really got to get that little mental block out of my head, because it's I've just never had it good there, always a bit of a struggle. But everyone does. That's just the nature of the sport, right? But every track, a completely different characteristics, right? Which makes it interesting. Some are very glidey, relaxy, don't have to do much, and some you just have to be really on it. Sometimes there's a mixture of both, and yeah.
And so would you change your runners for like the different types of track? You said sometimes like it's for more control and less friction. So like
you definitely. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, go ahead. Yeah, like the more technical tracks, do you want more sharper blades so that you can dig in more?
More or less. You definitely want a bit more control on the harder tracks, and you will change your sled compared or to a certain track. But for me personally, I more or less change my runners to ice conditions, right? That's a really big one in our sport, because the warmer it gets, the softer the ice is, the more grip the ice has on its own naturally. And then the colder it gets, the harder the ice gets, which presents another challenge, of course, because there's not nearly as much grip. So yeah, you'll tune your sled to a certain track and stuff, but it's definitely, for me, I changed my setup more to ice temperatures and ice conditions.
Cool.
So do you guys have like an equipment manager, or are you doing all this on your own?
No, I got a new sled guy in the last couple of years he's been doing the heavy work, and he's got this thing too, right? Where he's like, it's good to kind of have a general, to know more or less what's going on with this sled, but as an athlete too, you can get in the mindset of thinking you know everything, and it can get into a pretty dark, crazy spiral. So he's been doing a lot of the heavy work. Of course, I do a lot of the stuff too, but all the stuff that involves the brains, I leave to him before I, make things worse by trying, right? So no, he's been great. We've been trying some really cool things, and yeah, he's got some really, really bright ideas for the future. Duncan Kennedy, shout out, of course. And yeah, I'm really excited to work with him.
Right on.
Attaboy, Duncan.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go, Dunk.
Do you get to customize your sled at all? We had a ski jumper, Abby Straight, on last week, and she has like a bumblebee sticker that she has on her equipment. Do you ever like get to put initials or anything cool like that?
You can, but of course it all kind of comes down to like certain sizes of things. You can really customize things on your own for sure, but it's the sponsorship logos, right, that are kind of the problem area for sure. But yeah, we can do customizations. I keep mine pretty simple, right? Mm-hmm. Red pod with the black Kufins this year. I thought that was a pretty sleek look and simple, happy with it. Kind of the Canadian colors, right? So yeah, that's kind of what I did.
Right on.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong there.
Exactly. Keep it simple, right?
Oh, you mentioned there that obviously you're on a little bit of vacation, your season's done. Now that you're back home, what do you get up to in the off season?
Oh man, right now in the off season, well, this is my off season, so I'm gonna start getting up the hill more, do some skiing. I'm into mountain biking too, so skiing, mountain biking, the Whistler sports. I didn't really get up to much of that last week. I actually came back from Mexico with a positive COVID test. So it was a lay low week. I just got out of my quarantine on Monday. So exciting stuff. The weather's beautiful. Might actually head down to Squamish, BC and hit a quick little ride today. But yeah, cool. Now just relaxing, kind of catching up on the mountain sports I've been missing out on the last like 5 months on the road. So
yeah, you got quite the playground in your backyard there.
Yeah.
Okay. I wouldn't have it any other way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And better to have that positive COVID test after than before the Olympics. I can imagine that was kind of stressful leading up to it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because, the way the whole Omicron variant was going around, it was turning into one of these things that's like an unavoidable situation, because normally we could take precautions into our own hands to kind of, stay away and keep all the tests negative. But the way it was spreading like wildfire over in Europe, it made it really stressful, actually, especially, the final moments too, right? Because getting into China, they have they did have strict tests, but of course the rules were changing every day. So we were told things pretty much from like after Christmas. They're like, hey guys, don't get COVID or else you might not go to the Olympics. Like, good luck and stuff like that. So, we were living a pretty isolated life, doing things very carefully. Normally the moments leading into an Olympics are tense, but when you're not actually sure you can go in there and compete because of something so out of your control, absolutely adds another stressor to it. But, we all made it in safe, which was really nice. It was a huge weight off the shoulders none of us really knew about until we were actually in China in the Olympic villages. Like, wow, we made it, which was just such a sigh of relief. And it was kind of like, now we can actually focus on the important stuff, right? Like all the racing. But I got to give it to the staff of Luge Canada. They did a great job all year at dealing with all the nightmare COVID logistics. So the athletes could focus on the sliding, right? So I really got to give it to them. They did a lot of really heavy work this year, and super appreciative of that. But still, of course, it's a stressor too, right? So
Yeah, especially with you guys going all around the world too. Luge Canada would have had to really heighten up their socks for that one.
No kidding. And they did a good job. We all made it to the Olympics, all made it back. So
Yeah, logistical nightmare, but it was handled well.
no
So,
kidding, right?
Going to the Olympics, were you with your Luge team? I assume so, eh?
Yeah, we traveled the world together, right? So
Yeah.
we were on the road for 5 months doing a bunch of training, doing the whole World Cup tour, and even going to the Olympics together. So yeah, it wasn't like I was meeting any new faces going to the Olympics. I knew these guys all along, right? So yeah.
And is there any difference between I'm assuming obviously there's a pretty large difference between this Olympics and your last Olympics, but like COVID aside, just from being so much younger the first time around and coming in as more of maybe a veteran, I'm sure there's lots of first time Olympians every time. But what's it like just coming in as one of the top dogs instead of a fresh face?
The approach was definitely more or less the same. Actually, it was actually really similar going into Pyeongchang as a young kid. Of course, 19 years old, right? First Olympics, had a horrible season leading up to it. I mean, I got my qualification, which was great, but things other than that just really fell apart and didn't go my way. Similar stories this year, but I went into the Pyeongchang Olympics, like things have gone so wrong. I want to focus on having like 4 clean runs, not anything special, just 4 runs straight down the hill. And of course, finishing 12th there was massive. That was a huge result for me. And that still to this day, Pyeongchang was the best race I've had in my life, for sure.
Wow.
The pressure was on, and it was more or less kind of the same situation heading into China, right? I had these expectations of where I knew I could slide and knew where I could compete, but I wasn't quite there. So I just went in with a super similar mindset, knowing what had happened in the past. Anything can really happen. You can always surprise yourself, especially when all the pressure's on, right? So it was just like, you know what, just focus on the clean runs and just try to have fun with it. Things haven't panned out well. This is the end of it. So go try to have fun. Unfortunately, I had a really big mistake in my men's singles event on the second run. That was super costly. I made mistakes on all 4 of my runs, but it was the mistake I made in run 2 that really cost things big time. So it was a disappointment, but that's just the way things go in luge, right? It's a cruel mistress, but
I hear you. So like you said, there's the 4 runs and one really cost you. Are they cumulative, or are you trying to just put together one really good run?
No, it's all 4 run combined time. So you got to show up for all of them, which makes it difficult, where it favors consistency so much, right? Because in a normal World Cup situation, it's just 2 runs. So it's 2 run combined time, fastest wins. But over at the Olympics, it's 4 runs over 2 days. So you have 2 runs on the first day, and then you got another day to do another 2, right? So yeah, makes it a really interesting one. The track in China was it was a really challenging one on its own. It had a super unique characteristics, and people who put 4 runs down the hill could really surprise themselves with a good result, right? So that track really favored consistency. I definitely, as an athlete, struggle a bit with consistency, which is easier said than done in our sport for sure. But yeah, unfortunately, the big mistake on the second run is what really kind of cost things. But
Gotcha.
yeah.
So you talk about consistency. I just want to ask, the Germans, like they swept the podium with 4 golds. What kind of, or like, have they just been dominant ever since way back since, or is there something they are in the water over there? What kind of, like, what you look up to? I don't know.
No, ever since the beginning, right? Luge has always been dominated by the Germans. They have such a strong program. They've had a really strong program for years, right? And they have 4 tracks over there that we race World Cup on, right? So they just have such a deep program. They have so many different facilities they get to train on. And each one of these facilities has different clubs of athletes, and it's a huge part. They have so many athletes, right? So they can always really filter through to the best ones, the fastest ones. And yeah, no, great athletes, great sled equipment for sure on their part. There's no denying that, but strong program, and they always show up at the Olympics. And of course they did it again too, but no, it's nothing new. The Germans are always a serious force in our sport.
Obviously, you hang out with your team a lot. You just said you're with them for 5 months of the year, so you get to know them pretty well. But is there any mentors that you look up to in your sport that really helped you get to where you are now?
Yeah, no, of course. It was always the national team athletes when I was one of the younger guys. So usually the men's singles guys, of course. But a really cool thing actually was I just started sliding for, I think it was like within my first season. Yeah, I was on the sled for just a year. And then of course the Olympics happened here, right? So
Yeah.
Me being a little luge fanatic at a young age, right? Of course I watched like all the sliding events, especially luge, right? And it was just super cool to kind of, when I was more like 16, 17, and I was starting to be noticed by the national team and started training with them a bit more, started doing some races with them. It was so cool to, be racing and training with these guys who I watched as heroes at the Vancouver 2010 Olympics, right? The men, the women, and the doubles. That was a pretty surreal moment for me to actually be like, well, now I'm a part of this group, and super exciting. And yeah, no, that was kind of the big thing. Definitely the Canadians on the national team, especially the ones I watched in the Olympics, right? That was just so cool because, being 11 years old, chubby little kid, that was like superhero status in my books, right? So
we were kind of in the same boat. We actually had a bobsledder right here from PEI. She was over there. Her name was Heather Moyes, and she came.
Oh, yeah.
We were cheering on right alongside you, I'm sure.
Oh, nice. Right on.
Yeah, so there's some PEI connections to the track.
Yeah. Right
on. Growing up in Whistler, like you obviously have all these types of extreme sports around. Did you ever like play hockey or any of the more normals, or not normal, but more common sports in Canada?
I didn't. I never played hockey. I never played soccer, and yeah, never did really any of those. It was just kind of skiing and biking for me. That was kind of it. I did a bit of golf when I was young, and I'm gonna make a comeback this year. I played a few games last year, kind of embarrassed myself, but this year I'm committing, gonna get myself a set of clubs and really shape up and become a force on the links, right? So
yeah,
just skiing and biking, a little bit of golf, not really. It was just maybe a week out of the year, but yeah, those are kind of the things I do. But golf this year, that's the big goal. I want to become a strong golfer. So
yeah, and enjoy fine tuning your golf game. I'd say it's probably just as difficult as tuning that sled up.
Yeah, it's a mind game too, right? You blow a hole, you shoot one right into the trees. You gotta shake it off for the next one, right?
Yeah.
Take some deep breaths. It's good. It's good cross training, right?
Yeah, 100%. Work on the mental game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. So, do you have any plans for the future? Like, what's next in your sights? You've had 2 Olympic Games. I'm sure you're going to be looking at the next ones, but is there anything else on your list for career accolades that you're trying to knock down?
No, yeah, of course. Still looking at the next ones for sure, with a bit of a different approach, but that's a little conversation for kind of another time here. But yeah, I want to try flying planes. That's kind of something I want to get into. And I don't know, right now I just kind of want to get in the sky. I'm sure it's going to be something I'll love and be super interested in, but yeah, get in the sky and kind of see where things take me from there. But yeah, right now I kind of want to start logging hours. I'm trying to get something going here with the local flight school in Squamish, BC, and yeah, see how that goes. See sort of what ideas those bring up, and yeah, see from there. But of course, I'm getting to a point now where it's like, Luge has been great and all, but now it's time to start looking and seeing at what I want to be doing in the real life. So that's kind of the loose plan right now. So yeah, more to come with that hopefully soon.
Right on. Yeah, not shying away from the speed anytime soon.
No, exactly.
Never know. Maybe you can fly all your teammates and you around the world.
Who knows, right? Look at that. In a perfect world, hey?
Yeah. Help out Canada Luge with some tickets at the very least to pay them back.
Look at that. All these bright ideas, hey?
Yeah. We got you covered.
Love it.
That's awesome. I was not expecting that answer.
No, that's unreal.
Yeah. Because I guess Luge as a career is, not super realistic. Is it a sport that, like, I can't imagine, you're doing it too late? There was a guy we saw, he won his medal. It was his first gold at the Olympics, I think. And he was at like coming on right at the end of his career in like his mid 30s. Is it something you see yourself doing that late?
It's tough to say. It's tough to say, kind of just taking it year by year, one day at a time. But that is the thing with our sport, right? Is age is favored for sure. All the experience, all that, it makes such a big difference, right? There's a few young guys that have done really great in the past, but this is definitely a sport where it takes a lot of time to really kind of show up and be consistent, be a real force. But yeah, I don't know if that's really where I want to be right now. I'm 23 years old right now, and like I gotta say, my body it's not quite doing the things it used to, right? Like I had some back issues, some weird shoulder things going on. It's definitely taking a toll. So respect to those guys in their 30s, right? Keep staying on top of it physically, right? So
yeah, I can just picture my mom telling my shoulders to straighten up when I've been going down the track like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely get the most out of it while you can, for sure.
No, exactly. But yeah, no, right now it's definitely time to have a look and see what's going on the other side. Check out that part of life too, right?
Yeah, 100%, man. That's unreal though.
Or could you see yourself like staying in the game as a coach, or have you ever had any like coaches that have left a really big impact that you could see yourself doing for someone else?
It's tough to say. Like I'll do a bit of coaching here and there. I'm showing up to the track in the next couple of days, right, to kind of help the youth group going on here, right? Do a bit of coaching for them, right? But right now it's something that actually that involves like all the traveling, doing all that stuff. It's a tough job. So right now, like not in a serious way, no, but of course, like in a way to like the local youth programs going on here, absolutely, right?
Oh,
always to that, try to get the kids all excited about luge, motivate them a bit, right? Get them all jazzed up. And yeah, but as far as like actual like coaching goes, like on a serious level, that I don't think that's for me. Not right now anyways, right? So
yeah, no, I can imagine as like such a niche sport in Canada that having like trying to grow the sport, I guess, in a country where it's not super popular, having someone who's out there on the world circuit can be a pretty big inspiration for the kids.
Yeah, cheers, man. And that's kind of the plan too, right? We recently just lost the track in Calgary, Alberta, which was definitely doing all the heavy lifting of recruiting in our program. So now we're kind of just based out of the Whistler track here, which is taking a big hit. So right now it's super important we get all the kids in we can, and they just have fun with it. They got to love it, right? And it's super important, right? Keep them motivated, and just let them know that there's a real shot of making a super cool career out of this, right? And it's not just something fun. It can take you all over the world, even to a few Olympics. And of course the life experience is just so rich, right? So always keep them interested in that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And when you're younger, like what do you start off doing? Like I can imagine they don't just throw you down on the main track right away, zipping around. When you're like 6 or 7 years old, what do they start you out on?
So they start you out on like more or less training wheel sleds, pretty light, super stable, don't have much drivability. They're kind of just there. And they're, of course, they're not just sending you from the top of the track, right? It takes a lot of years. So for the track in Whistler here, they start you from corner 13, there's 16 corners. So you only get to go through like 4 corners, but you still get a taste of the speed, right? So you just kind of lay there. You get a feel for some of the corners that are pretty, I say slow, but you can still reach speeds of like 70 kilometers an hour. And from there, they slowly move you up like in the development years, corner by corner. So every time you kind of move up a corner, things start to come a little faster, right? It's just a big milestone to achieve. And that's how they do all the progression at a young age, right? So they make sure you have the fundamentals down, nailed at your start position. And then when you're showing you can slide well consistently, then they'll talk about moving you up a corner, right? And that's kind of step by step into becoming, just the full-time athlete, because they would, can't send you from the top of the track, right? That's just
danger waiting to happen, really.
Yeah, not gonna.
Just got trouble all over it, right?
Yeah.
We're getting pretty good in time, eh? It's 45 minutes, I think. So
yeah,
that flies by, hey?
Yeah.
time flies and you're having fun.
Yeah.
100%.
Nice, guys.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
It's been great to speak with you about such a cool sport. I enjoy the rest of your off season.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on, guys. That was cool.
We'll be following along now.
Yeah, if you want to tune up that golf game, we got a lot of courses here on PEI. So
I might have to take you up on that, hey?
just fly over.
Start the new PGA.
Yeah.
So.
Great.
Future's looking bright, right, guys? Awesome. Sweet.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, no problem. Pleasure was mine. Cheers, guys. That was awesome.
I'll see you later.
See you, man.
Later, guys.
Peace.